had it all set up, and then that afternoon she stuck her head in my bedroom door. And all she said was, "My father used that trunk to store some of the things that we had to leave behind when we left for camp."
Susan Kamei is the managing director of the Spatial Sciences Institute, an adjunct professor of history at USC, and author of the book, When Can I Go Back to America? Voices of Japanese American Incarceration During World War II. Susan spent her early career as a lawyer and activist, fighting to pass the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, which provided redress for Japanese Americans that were incarcerated. This is Lightbulb Moments by USC, a podcast that captures moments of brilliance across campus at the University of Southern California. I'm Jessica Peretta from University Communications. Today, we're talking with Susan Kamei, recognized as one of the country's most prominent and visible scholars on the Japanese American incarceration. She shares her personal family history and reflects how these stories create opportunities for learning.
So I am a descendant of those who were incarcerated. My 4 grandparents were immigrants from Japan. They are the generation known as the first generation, or the Issei. And they were not able to become naturalized citizens because of the politics and the policies of the time. My parents are the first generation that was born here. And so that's known as the second generation, or Nisei. And they are American-born citizens. So at the time of the issuance of Executive Order 9066 on February 19, 1942, by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, this executive order gave the military the ability, the authority, to forcibly remove all persons of Japanese ancestry, so the first generation Issei immigrants, as well as the American-born citizens of Japanese ancestry, from portions of the West Coast, from Washington, Oregon, through California, and into part of Arizona. And that was the beginning of their detention throughout World War II.
What is so important about using these stories, human stories, as the centerpiece for teaching history?
It's about telling the story of those who experienced the incarceration and why these are continuing episodes that are happening today to other communities, marginalized communities, and therefore continue to remain relevant and not just a footnote in history. During the redress campaign, we dealt with what I'd call the justifiers and the deniers. People that said, well, there was all these good reasons, you were the enemy, or it wasn't that bad, or everybody had to make sacrifices during the war, and we all made them, and this was your sacrifice, so what's your problem? It was about, during the campaign, to be able to humanize the story, that to be able to say, this did happen, it happened to real people. And these are people that you might have something in common with, because what if this would happen to you?
Do you remember a time that really influenced you to pursue this work?
At one of my best friend's home when she was celebrating her 16th birthday, and her mother had given her a hope chest. And most of the audience don't know what a hope chest is. And so I explain a little bit about, it was a chest that was very beautifully decorated, and it was a place where she was going to store her favorite things. And I thought that was really a nice concept. And I had seen my mother's father's trunk. It had his name on it, a steamer trunk, on a shelf in the garage. And I thought, oh, I wonder if my mom will let me use my grandfather's trunk in my bedroom. That could be my hope chest. And so I asked her, and she went, oh, what, you want that old thing? But then she acted kind of pleased that I was interested. She says, well, you have to clean it up. And I cleaned it up and I hauled it up to my bedroom and I had it all set up. And then that afternoon, she stuck her head in my bedroom door. And all she said was, my father used that trunk to store some of the things that we had to leave behind when we left for camp. And that was all she said. And that was all she said.
And what is something you want readers to take away from your work?
It's easy to think, well, what happened to 125 plus thousand people gets reduced to the common story, but there were 125,000 plus people who had to make individual decisions. Their personal situations, their family considerations, their life considerations were all individual and unique to them, and they had to make their decisions and live their lives in the ways that they felt were the best, and this sometimes put them at great odds or great divisions within the community.
How do you think that this book fits in to our modern world and our time now?
Then candidate Trump, and then as president-elect, was saying, and his surrogates were saying, that President Roosevelt was right to do this, and if he were president, he would do this all over again. And it was this moment of horror for all of us that had been part of the redress campaign, and those of us who are descendants of incarcerees, that we thought we had fought this battle, and we thought there was legislation and a presidential acknowledgement that this action was wrong. And yet here we are with someone who was now our elected president saying, not only was this right, but I'm going to do it again. And so that was the environment in which so many things like Stop Asian American Hate and Stop Repeating History and so many different causes now were formed and are still, we realize that the fight is even greater than we thought it was. And I decided that my contribution was to teach and to help educate, especially teachers who teach about difficult history, and that was what I identified it as the best thing that I felt I could contribute to the cause. And then from the materials that I had compiled to teach the course, I had an opportunity to put that into book form with Simon & Schuster, and from the publication of the book, now have been able to talk about this with everything from libraries to organizations that support teacher training, with museums that are that have done or have exhibits about some element of the incarceration.
And what do you think drives you to this day?
Just when I think I've read possibly the most heartbreaking story ever, I read something else that is, and there's no moral comparison here. You know, they're all tragedies, but just when I think, oh, you know, it's just such a bottomless pit of things that were so wrong and heartless. And so I hear from other from students who are currently, you know, at the research stage, and they encounter this, you know, this is just overwhelmingly bad. And I get that question from them. They say, "How do you do it? How do you keep going?" And I said, "Because we have to. Because these are threats. These are existential threats to our democracy that are happening today. And there are people, and there will be people who will be in positions to make the same heartless, cruel, unfair, discriminatory, prejudicial decisions. That's happening now, and it will continue to happen.
How do you think that this book fits into our modern world and our time now?
One of the lessons for the Japanese American of the subsequent generations is to say, okay, not enough people were organized. There wasn't a day of social media, right? Not enough people were good-hearted people. The Quakers at the head of the pack had the ability to be organized to say, okay, slow down here, this is wrong. They needed others to stand up for them, and they didn't have that. There was many wonderful examples of kindness and humanity on an individual basis, but not enough to be able to push back against this incredible onslaught of a political boulder that just rolled and rolled so quickly and became, just exploded out of hand.
And I'm curious, how has this work and dedicating your life to it affected you personally?
So first and foremost, it's about recognizing how much respect and gratitude my generation owes them. But I also think that what's affected me has been the depth of the personal stories of others, the kindnesses that made such critical differences in other families' lives. It's endless about the heartache and the tragedy that the families had to bear, and so I think it's for me an opportunity, a real blessing to be able to have the ability, the context of talking to the generation that I think our future is in their hands, right? In terms of how they're going to be actively encourage them that now it is in your hands. You have to be the ones to be actively engaged, and it's not my place to tell you how to do that or what your positions are. But what I hope I give you is the opportunity to have a framework of reference, that you have these different ways that you can evaluate what's happened in the past and say for yourself, how does that help me understand what's happening today? And then what do I want to do about that going forward in the future?
Thank you, Susan. I really appreciate you coming and speaking with me and, giving us some of your time. So
thank you.
Thank you for listening to Lightbulb Moments by USC. You can find this podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever else podcasts are found.